I did bring some books.
She's a good girl, that Mary. Where did you put them?
Over in that green
there.
bag.
Right, those of you who didn't get to the book launch on Sunday, Mary brought some books along. Four books.
I couldn't carry anymore. They're heavy.
Couldn't carry anymore. And the reader, so that the card reader, so that if you wanted to have one and you wanted to pay for it on your credit card, she can do that. Mary, look, she's so talented. Not only that, she designed all the artwork and did the cover and everything. So it's just as she does our CD covers. So it's lovely. And so if you'd like to have a look at it and you'd like to get a book, see Mary.
Or I'll accept cash. I'll accept cash.
She'll accept cash.
Well done.
I prefer to accept cash after the argument she had with the reader on Sunday.
I won.
You did. Well done, you. And also, sorry, Meg, before you start, also, tonight is the giving out of the prizes of the T-shirt competition. And you know who you are, you know if you won, and you know if you didn't win. And the shirts are here, and the token prizes are here. So this will happen after Meg has told her story. So please, welcome back from Scotland. Thank you. Meg Philp.
I had a great time in Scotland. It was a holiday that I had, like no other. And all sorts of coincidences happened. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. 2 weeks ago, on the Monday night, I was in Stirling. My friend's brother, and we've sung together in the past, said, I'll take you to the, I've told you this story already, Jack, I'll take you to the folk club at Stirling. I said, oh, nice, yes, okay. So we went to Stirling and we talked all the way. And it was really interesting, nothing like, you go into a place, and it was in a rugby club down by the river, the River Forth in Stirling, and it was all set up. You walked into this room after going through all these low rooms with walls, whatever, and it was all set up, acoustic, lights, big banners, cables running along the floor, mics. I thought, oh, this is no like red hell. I don't know what this is going to be like. So it was really interesting. A couple of guys did a bracket at the beginning, one on the accordion, one on the guitar. The guitar player was fabulous. They sang well together. It seemed to be an audience of admirers, not many musicians. And then they had a feature winter set, a group, a husband and wife team who performed, and they, after the first half hour, they were given the next half hour, and then we had a break, and then Winterset came back on again after the break. But at the break, Ian went off, and I was sort of left thinking, So you kill a bit of time on the toilet, come back, and a woman says to me nearby, one who told me where the toilet was, so where are you from? Expecting me to say Cowdenbeath, Dunfermline. And I said, Brisbane. And the woman beside her said, oh, Brisbane. A friend of mine's son married a girl from Brisbane. I said, really? And you've heard that story before. Really? She said, yeah, Donald. And I'm like, I said, I know who you're talking about. Donald and Rebecca. She said, oh my God, she said, I'm going to put it on Facebook. So that was one coincidence. Oh dear God, I couldn't get over that. And the other coincidence was my sister found this in a library clearance sale. And she knows I like biographies and autobiographies, so it's called Hellfire and Herring, A Childhood Remembered. And the reason she bought it is because the chap who wrote it, Christopher Rush, was brought up in St Monans, which is a fishing village on the east coast of Fife, the county where I come from. And I thought, oh, that's nice, hellfire and herring. I couldn't figure out what the hellfire was, but the herring I could relate to. And I sort of, late at night, started reading this. And then I'd like to dedicate this reading because I have to say to you, there are some things that are stories that are so well written, you have to read them aloud. I can't just let go and wander off in the story. This is so well written, but I'm going to share it, and I dedicate it to the Red Hill Boys, as will be made evident pretty soon. I also want to plug the fact that reading aloud is such a gift. If you have someone who reads aloud to you, or you really read aloud to someone else, my friend Annie's mum is in the late stages of dementia, but when you read to her, she doesn't interrupt, she just listens really quietly, whether it's a poem or a short story. I tried it, Annie tried it, and it made a difference. Reading aloud, there's something about the tone of your voice. Everybody's got a voice, but because we use it all the time, we don't value it as much as we should, because everybody's voice is as unique as their DNA. And so that's your imprint on the air, your voice, and it's really, really important to read aloud if you can. So I'll give it a wee go. And the other thing I should tell you was I did go to Dundee. I had to go to Dundee because I've been singing the Spinners' wedding song, and that's another story I'll tell you another time about Dundee. But this is talking about his early childhood. Like he was about 7 or 8, and he had a father who was in the Navy who was English. He was named after him, Christopher Rush, and the father was violent. The mother didn't seem to have much sway with him, but was, I don't know that I haven't got to the end of the book yet. I hope to God she got rid of him. And the wee boy, he was the only child, had a terrible start. You know, he was really, really unhappy. But as is common in villages, there's always, everybody looks after themselves, one another. And there was a woman called Levy. Now, Levy, I'm guessing, might come from Elizabeth, but it's a Scots word. And Levy was an old wifey that nobody knew who she was really, where she came from, what her family was, but she was an old woman, and she knew everybody in the village. Not the ones that were still alive, but the ones that came before that. And Levy took Christopher in hand one day after she found him crying around the corner of a wall and said, "You need to know where you come from. Come on home with me." And she sat him by the fire, she lit a pipe, because women did smoke pipes in those days. This was, he was born in the 40s, so still 50s, right. And Libby proceeded to talk to him about, he needed to know where he came from and who his family were. And she dismissed his father. He's English, we're not talking about him, but really talked about the grandfather, his grandfather's line through his mother. So it goes something like this. There was a woman in his mother's background called Mary Burke, or Buick. They made a mistake on her gravestone in 1700s and made an R into an E, so it could be either way. But anyway, this woman did exist. Mary Burke came down from Dundee and married a Cellardyke fisherman called Watson, Thomas Watson. Cellardykes between Anstruther and St. Lawrence. Anyway, he was press ganged in 1797, and the Jolly Jack Tars took Mary along too, mainly on account of her being a nurse. What could be better on board a man of war? So the pair of them became guests of His Majesty aboard HMS Triumphant, which took them to Leith. After that, it was the high seas and the French wars. The century turned like a tide and lifted Thomas Watson to the position of boatswain gunner. And it was on the HMS Ardent, a line of battleship with 64 guns. And it was below the decks of that ship, to the thunder of those guns, that their baby Margaret was born, right in the thick of the Battle of Copenhagen in 1801. Some birth that was. In the middle of that death-ridden bedlam, down in the cockpit, the bloody boom of the ship, delivered among the dead and dying, Margaret Watson's cradle was a rolling man-of-war that shivered and shook in the North Sea. Her lullaby was the iron song of cannonballs, the rending of timbers, the shrieks of mutilated men. Stranger still for all those suffering and doomed sailors, whose cries were filling the ship, to hear the wail of a newborn baby rising thinly into the world of terrors that they were just on the point of leaving. And so then there were three. And the battle was a victory for Nelson. Their employers would have let them go after that, but Thomas and Mary stayed in the service for a further 5 years, until 6 months after Trafalgar. And the little girl stayed with them, knowing nothing much of the wide world except ships and sailors during all that time. Her lasting memory was of Trafalgar itself. Margaret remembered the roaring and rolling, the flashes of fire and the clouds of smoke, and the song of the guns among the shrieking beams. She remembered her mother, standing with arms red to the elbows, helping the man with the shining blades who did such terrible things to the sailors. And she recalled their shouts. "Close up there, 2 points aft the beam, point blank, fire, Daniel, fire!" And she remembered the man with the stars on his coat being brought down to the cockpit and laid out on some spare sails, where Captain Hardy kissed him. He'd asked for lemonade and wine and water, and he never finished it. The tide had gone out of his body, and no sun nor moon could bring it in again. Soon afterwards, the ship burst into the round of sweet cheers for the victory that matched its name. But the cheers withered almost as soon as they had begun. Everybody was thinking of that great sailor stretched out on his bed of sails. It was Mary Burke who dressed the corpse and embalmed it for burial back in England. Nelson had asked not to be given to the waves and sold to the famous barrel of rum and the tapping of the Admiral. The sailors sucking the life force out of their leader, imbibing his seamanship all the way home. As for the Watsons, they'd had enough action and adventure for a lifetime. They returned to Cellardyke, where with their prize money, they opened an ale and pie shop at the Harbour Head. Margaret Watson married a cooper. She had a large family but outlived every single one of them and lived on to tell her story 1,000 times. Drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm.
And we'll roll the old cherry along.
I heard you singing that.
Is that your water? And is that your thing?
Yes, it is.
So now we have come to it. Meg Philp.
Thank you.
And as one does in these occasions, one gives the runners-up their prize first. 2 of you aren't here tonight. Alan and Irene are at a jazz club function, and David Jacobs can't be here. But the runners-up of the T-shirt competition were Susie Clark. You think I'm going to give this to you while you're sitting in your chair? There you go. Hold on, and Brad Jones. I can't say wear it proudly.
Does it
Display it proudly.
I knew you didn't have enough to write, so